September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and suicide is a topic at Boulder Crest Institute and the Struggle World at Boulder Crest Retreat that we spend a lot of time focused on because suicide has become an epidemic amongst combat veterans, first responders, veterans, and our society at large. And it is a topic that is serious, and it is a topic that is important. And what we wanted to do in honor of that month was, I'm sitting here with Paul Downs, who's our program director in Virginia, is to take a few moments and share with you, as two people who contemplated suicide very seriously, really why we decided to stay. And I'd say two things at the top as well. Is the one thing we've learned in all the work we've been doing, working with people who are suicidal and going through our own experiences, that there's no such thing as a suicide expert. And the second is that the goal isn't suicide prevention. It's not helping people get to a point where they just won't do it. It's about helping people and in our own lives creating a life worth living. Because if we have a life worth living, we're going to stay. So with that in mind, we wanted to share a few of the thoughts and conclusions we came to that led us to still be here to this day and to having what are truly lives worth living. The first thing that occurred to me in the context of the reflection I did was that there's only one rule in this life, and that's that we didn't decide when we got here, and we don't get to decide when we leave. Right. And we're not the timekeeper. Everything else is within the bounds of our choice, but that isn't. We have to live the life we've been given in that respect.
From the start to the finish.
Yep, from the start to the finish. The second is that your future self, my future self, Paul's future self, knows things that the current version of me doesn't know. By virtue of the people I will encounter, the things I will learn, the experiences I will have, the breaks that will come my way, that there are things that I will know now that I didn't know then. And that's been consistently true through life, and it's a life of growth.
Yeah, I think on that, one of the coolest things that I've had the privilege of learning and understanding is meeting people who have experienced the other side of what I was going to choose to do. And now that I know them, I can talk to them and earn a perspective that I never would have had if I'd left. I would never know what it would have been like to have been someone who was left behind by the choice that I made. But now I know them. And it's so cool to be able to widen my perspective that way, and just to see that that this doesn't just disappear if I leave. It doesn't go anywhere, it just spreads.
Yeah, and that's the third thing, is that you don't take your pain with you. And we get it. We're not simplifying this. We understand what it's like to feel like you're a burden, where the world will be better off and the people you care about will be better off with you not around. We 100% understand that. And we also understand, as Paul was just saying, that it's not true that you take the pain with you. We know the statistics say that the 65 people closest to someone who takes their own life are 3 to 5 times more likely to take their own lives. It puts suicide into their horizon, into their vision, into their scope of the possible. And I've sat with kids who are 8 and 10 and even 6 who've talked to me about being suicidal. And I think it's important to recognize that, and I understand there's a lot of non-rational thinking when you're going through all of this, because I've lived it and Paul's lived it. It's also true to say that the pain does not go away, it merely transfers. And it's important to consider that as you consider the motivation to keep fighting, to keep trying to put one foot in front of another, is critical. And I think the other part of that that's more philosophical that we've been talking about is the question, what if you do it and the pain doesn't go away? Right? What if it's not a remedy to what ails you? And what if this is the only place where you can find the meaning and the purpose in your suffering?
Well, it is. And I mean, one of the things that we talk about all the time, especially during our PATH programs, is living in the moment. And one of the important things about that is that the only opportunity I have to make any change or to do anything is right here, right now, on this physical plane where I exist. Yeah. Not later, not yesterday, but today and right now. And I think that's a super important thing to bring up.
The fourth is that suffering has meaning. And the ancient Greeks would say that all great wisdom comes from suffering. One of our favorite books here is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which is certainly a book I contribute or attribute to saving my life at a time when I really couldn't hear anything else. And Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who spent 3 years in 4 concentration camps and speaks about how there is meaning to be found in the most dire of circumstances. And if that's true, if it's true that there's meaning to be found in suffering, then it's not without a purpose. Your job isn't to question, therefore, that suffering. It's to figure out the answer to that question is, why am I having this experience and why am I going through this?
And almost sometimes to just be comfortable not finding an answer. Okay. Just realizing that the questions I ask may actually just lead to more questions, but those questions give me a very palpable and tangible distance between what I learned and what I didn't know. It's like, as those questions kind of serve as I would say the sides and the rungs of the ladder, because as I ask those questions, I move forward, because I'm looking for new things and I'm curious about the world around me and I want the answer. Also being comfortable not getting them. It's key.
And I think the last bit is goes to something Paul talks a lot about, which is this concept of hope. And Paul, if I may steal your thunder, is hope being the recognition and the belief that your actions can create change. And we know that when we struggled, we found ourselves in a place where it felt like no matter what we did, no matter what we tried, nothing good could happen. And that loss of hope is ultimately what suicide's about. It's a disease of despair, of hopelessness. And one of the things that's so important in the work we do around post-traumatic growth and struggling well and normalizing struggle is the recognition that you may not see it, but hope still exists. That the life you seek still exists, you just haven't found it yet. And part of that goes to Paul saying, sit with the questions. And part of it's reading and recognizing that your struggle and your suffering makes you, at your core, the most human you will ever be. And that idea, and we'll also post a video from Stephen Colbert where he talks about that. And Colbert lost his father and his two brothers in a plane crash when he was young, and talks about this idea of being able to recognize and find those moments of hope in those times of suffering. And I think that idea of hope that I'd love you to talk a little bit about is at the core of what is the antidote to suicide, is believing that something good will eventually happen, but by and through your own actions.
Right. And I mean, I was talking to somebody very recently about some of the things and the practices that we talk about during PATH and that I live. And even those practices are amazing. And as an integral part of my life, they help keep me regulated and balanced. Because if I don't do them, I know what the possibility is. And I can't meditate my way always into the right thinking. I have to continuously do it. I have to continuously take these steps. I have to go to the gym, not because I might hurt, but because I might get hurt, and I want to be physically fit and able to be to move through that as I can. I mean, it's kind of metaphorical for life, really. But that last step's got to be up to us. That last action.
And that, I think, goes into, if we were doing the practical tips here, if you're struggling, you have to do different to get different. You can't sit and try to think your way out of a challenge. You can't solve spiritual problems with material solutions. You have to go out into the world and do differently. And we talk about lots and lots of wellness practices that help you reconnect your head and your heart and deal and metabolize stress and anxiety and the sadness that comes from life experiences. The second thing is to read and to learn and to listen to all of the people who've come before you who've similarly struggled. A third part of that is to talk about it. To talk about it with people who can genuinely and meaningfully listen. That may be a mental health professional, it may be a friend, it may be someone else in their crisis text line or other resources that exist, but it's critical to be able to talk about this stuff so you can make sense of it and realize that you're not alone, that you're not abnormal, and that struggle is the one part of the human condition that is universal to all of us. And that when we struggle, we often get lost and don't know how to find our way back to the light, and other people can help us do that. And those things allow you to get to a place where you can start to see the horizon again and start to walk towards your life and the new story of your life. The other part of that is if you're worried about someone, certainly Boulder Crest has programs for combat veterans and first responders. We've written Struggle Well, which you can read. In addition to that, just realize that the greatest gift you can give another human being is to listen to them. To listen without trying to judge or problem solve, but listen. And if there's one sort of magic bullet as it relates to suicide prevention authorities about this whole thing, it's that someone meaningfully listening to a person who's struggling is as close to a cure as you can get. So spend enough time to check in on the people you care about. Ask them if they're okay. When they tell you they're fine, ask them again. The second time they'll tell you the answer if they believe you're willing to listen. At the core of this is, as we said at the beginning, is working towards creating a life worth living. A life that's filled with passion and purpose and joy and growth and connection and service. And I hope that the two of us, as you can tell, we're passionate about this. We're both at points in our life where we didn't want to be here anymore. We thought there were no answers, and by hook or by crook, by luck and by happenstance, we stayed. And we have found those lives of great meaning and great purpose and met countless others who've been on a similar journey. And I'm always reminded when they interview people who tried to die at the Brooklyn Bridge or the San Francisco or the Golden Gate, who try to take their lives and they don't succeed, their regret happens the minute they take off. Before they land, it's the minute oh, I shouldn't have done this. And I think that moment of pause, for most people, is too late. And so I think the bottom line message is stay. The life you seek is here, and the support you seek is also here.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that always resonated with me was that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Like this, everything changes in life, and I think that's probably something that even at my young age I realize now, and it can change. I think that's probably one of the key messages.